Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a hobbled together mess of a game. It pulls aspects of gameplay from some of gaming's most legendary titles like Sekiro, Uncharted, and Metroid. It's a mess of a game that shouldn't work, but it does. How, you might ask? Well, the answer is simple. This game works for two words and two words alone: Star Wars. Okay, now I get it. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is another lame cash grab attempt from EA trying to milk the Star Wars fans of their money like Battlefront. Well, that's wrong, I tell you. Fallen Order may fail in gameplay aspects that other games succeed, like combat, exploration, and puzzle mechanics. But it succeeds in what is arguably more important for a Star Wars game. For better or for worse, this game lives and breathes the world of Star Wars created by George Lucas. The team at Respawn are obviously huge Star Wars fans, and it is evident and apparent in the music, the characters, and the world of this game. Hey there, video game fans from across all galaxies. My name is Christian, and this is going to be a review of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order released back in 2019, and currently, as this video is being recorded, we are mere days away from the sequel, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, from releasing, and I am super excited and super hyped for that game. So I thought I would just go back over and review the original game, as I never really had a chance to talk about it. So do me a favor, you guys. If you like the video, please consider subscribing, as it does help me out tons. And with that, let's get into this review. For majority of this video, I'm going to be going over all the things I love about this game, from the world and the characters. But before I get into all the things that I love and I think this game does great, I want to tackle all the things this game does wrong ahead of time. That way you understand I'm not being too biased, even though I'm going to be pretty biased in this review. So the first huge negative in this game, and it is pretty much apparent in any review you've ever watched of this game, and that's the combat. Combat in this game is very stiff. It's trying to emulate something like a Sekiro game, where it's like supposed to be smooth and supposed to be very fast paced. Unfortunately, they kind of missed the mark when it comes to combat. So the way combat works is everyone has a poise meter, and you want to kind of deplete the poise meter. That way you can like land a fatal strike on your opponent. You have different options when it comes to melee. So you can do square, which does just your regular slash with your lightsaber. Triangle, which does like a heavy slash. You can use your force ability, so you can pull enemies away. You have a parry button, so L1 is your parry button. Circle is your dodge, and X is your jump. You have different stances, so he has a stance like the regular stance with just the regular lightsaber. He has a dual lightsaber, which is weaker, but it slashes from two angles, so it's useful when fighting a horde of enemies. And then you add like a couple other weapons as you go through, but those are pretty much your main two for majority of the game. Slashing with your lightsaber always feels kind of awkward and never really feels too accurate. So like when you're playing Sekiro, everything feels very deliberate and everything feels very on point with where you want it to hit. Versus in this game, whenever you go up and you try slashing, you kind of just feel like you're flailing your arms around. You don't really feel like you're targeted properly. Even when you have the target on, you like Cal kind of just swings his lightsaber around, and it always feels very awkward. And I feel like lightsaber is a weird thing to like get right, but just because it's a made up thing, it doesn't really exist. Like when you actually make contact with the enemies, it doesn't really feel like heavy or like you're slashing through it, and it doesn't really feel like a laser beam or something. It feels kind of strange and awkward. The kudos that I will give to the combat system is some of the animations, especially for like the critical hits, are really cool to look at and very satisfying when you do get them. One of the other really cool things is like sending back the stormtroopers like beams from their guns is so satisfying and so fun to do from a distance. And I feel like those are probably one of my favorite things in the combat. The next big thing that this game tries to do right is exploration. And exploration is never too terrible in this game. The biggest drawbacks, I think, is they're trying to pull off of like an Uncharted vibe, where you're like sliding down things and swinging from ropes and climbing along ledges. And it never really feels as satisfying as Uncharted, just because I feel like Cal kind of moves very stiff, and sometimes the camera angles are really awkward, so you don't really know what you're trying to jump onto or what the game kind of wants you to go. But overall, the exploration was never really too terrible, and there were a lot of really cool moments where you do slide down one platform and then you grab onto a rope, or you have to jump from wall to walls. Like those things were always really cool. I just never felt like they were as implemented as smoothly as Uncharted was, just because again, like, the animation is very stiff sometimes. Overall, I just feel like his movements were very limited when it came to those like platforming moments, and I feel like for a Jedi, he should have been more smoother, and it should have felt more satisfying overall. But all in all, it wasn't too bad. Another big thing in this game is the like, Metroidvania aspect. So this game does play very similar to like a Metroid Prime, where you have this map and you can kind of only go to certain spots of the map based off the skills that you get, and then when you solve some puzzles, then it'll unlock a new ability for you in the form of like a flashback back to his like Padawan training. They make it make sense with some of the abilities that you're learning. I feel like though, like in Metroid, one of the things that make Metroid really cool is that when you do get a new ability, it has multiple uses and they always are really, really cool. And this one, I felt like they weren't bad. Like, they're what you expect a Jedi to get, right? Like force pull, force push, stuff like that you would expect a Jedi to have. And they make it make sense where like he has like trauma where he's been like, forgetting the force. So they make it make sense to the story. Just none of the powers were ever too groundbreaking or too exciting to actually get. Alright, now that I've sufficiently talked crap about this game, let's start saying why this game is amazing and why I think everyone should check this out regardless of being a Star Wars fan or not. But especially if you're a Star Wars fan. Because if I'm being honest, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is probably my favorite piece of Star Wars media I've ever consumed. From movies to books to shows, this has just been my favorite. So let's get down into the story of this game. So something that's really smart that Respawn did is they didn't take a story that already exists in the Star Wars world. In fact, what they did is they created a whole brand new original idea that is actually canon in the Star Wars universe. They kind of fleshed out their own world and their own characters in this gigantic galaxy that is Star Wars. And I feel like this was smart for a lot of reasons. I feel like had they done a story that is already in a movie or a show and kind of recreated it into a video game, everyone is always going to compare the game to the show. So Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order takes place after the fall of the Republic and during the dark ages of Star Wars, where Jedis are being hunted by Inquisitors. Empire is going through the galaxy planet by planet and pretty much taking control over whatever they can and running things the way they see fit. This brings us to our main character, Cal. Cal Kestis is a Jedi created specifically for this story. He was a young Padawan who never officially finished his training during the Clone Wars and during the fall of the Republic. He lost his Jedi Master pretty early on, and that's pretty much haunted him since then. And he's pretty much been in hiding until one day at work, he's forced in a situation where he has to use his Force abilities to save his friend's life. Now, because there was witnesses who saw him do this, he is now on the Inquisitor's watch list. He ends up being hunted down by the Inquisitors, and this is when he runs into the Mantis crew. The Mantis crew is composed of our grumpy but lovable pilot. We have an ex-Jedi who's cut herself off from the Force, who acts as kind of a new master to Cal. And of course, BD-1, who is your robotic droid companion. This is where the game thrives so well, when you band together a group of misfits across the galaxy in an attempt to save the world. This is what Star Wars has been about. This is what Star Wars made it famous back from A New Hope. And I really love it, especially with how fleshed out these characters are and how lovable they are. Cal is just such that guy that everyone wants to be. He's nice to everybody. He's always trying to do what's best, and he's never negative. Even when things don't look like they're going to work out in his way, he always has this, I'm going to find a way to make it work. And the fact that he has a team that's behind him, no matter, even if they disagree with him, it's just always really fun to see, and it just feels so wholesomely Star Wars. That's what this game loves to do and what makes it so special. It doesn't tell the audience what things are. It assumes the audience knows what these are from watching movies, from consuming other pieces of media, whether that be facing off against memorable, iconic villains from Star Wars media, or randomly name-dropping Wookiees, to scaling huge walkers. This game loves to be Star Wars. Never have I seen walkers this up close and feel so intimidating and really understood the grand scale of what these machines really are. This game fleshes out the world of Star Wars in no other way that I've ever seen be done aside from the actual mainline movies. From casually visiting iconic places in the Star Wars universe like Dathomir and Kashyyyk, to the dialogue from the stormtroopers that help you realize that these really truly are people with lives outside of the Empire. All in all, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order struggles in a way games shouldn't. It struggles with its performance and frame rates, its combat isn't anything exemplary, its exploration is very lackluster. It pulls some of the best gameplay mechanics from some iconic titles and doesn't do any of them nearly as great as the source material. But if you think about it, that's kind of Star Wars. That Star Wars is hell if you think about it. What is Star Wars? Star Wars is a science fiction space western that takes inspiration from samurai lore. It makes almost no sense. It's a storyline that takes place long time ago, but is somehow still in the future with technology. It is a very weird mesh of what makes other things great and pulls them into this universe and ties it around and wraps it up in a bow and makes it something purely, genuinely, unapologetically Star Wars. Now the question is, do I recommend Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order? And without a doubt, I 100% recommend this game to anybody and everybody who's a fan of video games, who's a fan of Star Wars. Even if you're not a fan of Star Wars, you must try this game. It is phenomenal in its delivery of what it's trying to do. Even if it misses the mark in some crucial moments, it delivers on things that it must and needs to, and that's the most important thing about this game. Well, those are my final thoughts on this game. Let me know if you've ever played this, if you're looking forward to the sequel. With that, I'll see you guys on the next video.